We begin in Venezuela, where the government has granted the release of the first prisoner under the agreements which were signed between the government and opposition parties on Monday. National Assembly Vice President Edgar Zambrano was seen leaving jail and speaking to the media. He had been arrested by intelligence agents on May 8th for his role in the April 30th coup attempt and held for 4 months. As a condition for his release, Zambrano must appear in court every 30 days and he cannot leave the country. Representatives of the opposition parties were there to greet the newly released Zambrano. Zambrano's release was announced by Attorney General Tarek William Saab. A review of detained politicians was among the 6 points which were agreed upon by all the parties in the peace document. On April 30th, Zambrano was recorded on a cell phone video in the early morning hours on the Altamira highway. He was first seen embracing Leopoldo López, then walking over to greet coup organizer Juan Guaidó. He was tried in a special court which deals with terrorism-associated crimes and was charged for crimes which threatened the Venezuelan state. The Venezuelan government and sectors of the opposition have signed 6 agreements as the starting point for a fresh round of dialogue. Let's take a closer look at them.
The agreements were signed after nearly 3 months of secret discussions. The 6 accords usher in a new phase of understanding among different political sectors. Diplomats from around the world bore witness to the occasion.
We urge the countries that worry about the situation in Venezuela to cooperate rather than interfere, and instead in solidarity with us, instead of imposing sanctions. We have agreed to this national dialogue so that we can achieve the measures that guarantee economical and political rights and allow for solutions in the context of sovereignty and the national constitution.
These initial agreements include the return of Chavista lawmakers to the National Assembly and a joint condemnation of the United States sanctions against Venezuela.
I have been an opponent of this government for decades, but above all, I am an opponent of the use of force and an opponent of permanent and pointless confrontation. The end does not justify the means.
For the signatories, it's a demonstration of faith in dialogue.
There
has been dialogue in Caracas starting 2 years ago. The Vatican sponsored 1 round of those talks. There was dialogue in the Dominican Republic, in Oslo and in Barbados, and so far there haven't been any results at all. That is very frustrating for those of us who believe we can overcome the issues we have in a peaceful manner, resolving our differences in a sensible, harmonious way.
There was a shared rejection of the violent approach of those opposition sectors led by Juan Guaidó.
In the last 3 months, there's been an extraordinary opportunity with the talks in Norway and in Barbados. We were banking on a successful outcome to those talks, but unfortunately, instead of results, we were told that there's no point in talking. So what are they proposing? Violence? Resignation? Or should we just fold our arms and give in to the interests of foreign powers?
The dialogue remains wide open to other parties from across the political spectrum who want to sign up and address the key issues of elections, the economy, and the country's institutions.
Venezuela's Bolivarian armed forces have rejected the activation of the InterAmerican Treaty of Reciprocal Assistance, the TR, by the OAS. Defense Minister Vladimir Padrino López called this treaty an obsolete, anachronic instrument of war, and warned of the consequences its activation would bring to the region.
This bizarre decision to categorize Venezuela as a threat to the hemisphere's peace and security blatantly uncovers the faces of the real threats to the region. They are pushing this interventionist treaty to intensify their aggressions, which are now surpassing an economic blockade and are betting on the use of force in order to achieve their vile goals. We must highlight that such an escalation would have disastrous results in all of South America, a region which over the past decade has been built up as a region of peace. It would become a region of war. It is disheartening that opposition members acting as mercenaries openly support these measures that seek to hurt our nation.
Venezuela's Foreign Minister Jorge Arriaza also condemned the latest threats of military action against the country by the U.S. government. On his Twitter account, Arriaza said the statement by the U.S. government on the agreements between the government and the opposition in Venezuela is an attack on the dialogue process. He added that the threat of use of force against Venezuela is a blatant violation of the United Nations Charter and international law. On Tuesday, the U.S. government issued more threats on Venezuela and its government. A statement released by the State Department echoed the government's threat of military action and praised the activation of the TR, an act that is widely seen as a move to justify armed interference in Venezuela. Bermuda remains on hurricane watch as Category 2 Humberto continues on a track that would take it to the northwest of Bermuda on Wednesday night. Hurricane force winds are already brushing the islands, but the biggest winds are expected to impact between 7 p.m. on Wednesday and midnight. The government is taking no chances with preparations. Public offices and schools are being closed, while a number of cruise ships have canceled their Bermuda stops. The National Security Minister, who is also chairman of the Emergency Measures Organization, has urged the public to heed the weather warnings.
One should be off the road here in Bermuda by 7 p.m. Wednesday evening. All public schools will close Wednesday afternoon at 12 p.m. Again, all public schools will close Wednesday at 12 noon. The last ferry will leave Hamilton at 12 noon on Wednesday. We're not going to police our way through this. At key junctions, we believe one of the key junctions is down at the airport at the Causeway. The Causeway will be restricted for emergency vehicles. And so we're saying as of 7 p.m. tomorrow night, we want everybody off the roads. That is for everyone's safety.
And disaster coordinator Steve Cocham provided a storm update on Tuesday evening.
Which means that hurricane force winds are possible on the island within 36 hours. We're expecting tropical force winds, which is 35 knots, to impact the island 3 p.m. on Wednesday, all the way through the evening until 4 a.m. on Thursday. Storm force winds, which are 50 knots, will impact the island 7 p.m. on Wednesday, through to 12 midnight.
The death toll in the Bahamas after Hurricane Durian stands at 51. Some of the islands on the Bahamas fear that they may not see closure if the bodies of their loved ones are not located or if they cannot be identified. The Minister of Health recognized the concern and also warns residents not to drink groundwater which could have been compromised.
But ultimately what we hope to do is to refine the missing persons list, compare it to the deceased confirmed dead, and get that list as close to accurate as possible. The water table has been contaminated by the intermingling of septic tanks, debris, dirt, other things. And until an all clear is given, the admonition remains, do not drink.
And the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency issued its most up-to-date report on Monday night. It confirms 50 fatalities, although the Royal Bahamas Police recently registered the total of 51. According to the agency, over 1,300 people are estimated to be missing, with more than 5,000 people evacuated and nearly 2,000 currently in shelters. Coming up, protesters are getting ready in Argentina as the Congress is set to debate a food bill to ease the crisis. Don't go away. Welcome back. Argentina Senate is set to vote on a bill that seeks to provide a 50% increase in food assistance programs amid the country's worsening economic crisis. Soaring inflation and rising poverty have been stirring outrage. Several protests have been staged against austerity measures introduced by President Mauricio Macri in order to comply with the terms of a record $57 billion IMF bailout. Protests in favor of the emergency food bill are expected to take place outside the Senate later today. Although the struggle for the bill to be decreed has been going on for months, the issue took on greater force after primary elections in August, which were followed by a rising US dollar against the Argentine peso. It has been 3 years and 9 months since President Macri took office, and he's still blaming the previous governments for all the problems in Argentina. So how are citizens judging Macri's failure to take responsibility for this crisis?
During his time in office, Macri has blamed the previous government for the economic and social crisis Argentina is going through. After the primary elections, he says those who won that election are really responsible for the lost devaluation.
When Macri took office, the country was not like how it is now. There were no people on the streets, and there were job opportunities. I had a job. Of course, now I am unemployed. And that Macri does not take responsibility of the reality that he has created, because through these loans he requested from the IMF, the country no longer has a say in its political and economical decisions. Argentina is not able to decide for itself. That is our reality. So I think it's very dangerous and very sad that the person who is in charge of the country does not take responsibility and keeps blaming Cristina and now Alberto.
While social organizations and the opposition are demanding the approval of the emergency food assistance, Culture Secretary Pablo Avelluto claims that hunger is just a campaign slogan.
I think they are provocations. I think these statements only generate more uncertainty, more anguish. Let's think that those that are here can help feed those that don't have anything to eat. This situation is very uncertain, and so much aggression by the national government only makes people feel worse. Imagine having no food for your children. The truth is the executive power is responsible.
Now Macri says that Argentina is in the middle of the river and needs to cross over to the future.
The reality that poverty is increasing. There are more kids that don't have anything to eat. More people live on the streets. Macri's lies are over.
Macri is very liberal, and liberals don't believe in the state. They don't believe in the state as a tool of transformation. They don't use the state. They consider the state should not intervene, that the market has to do it all.
While the government is still ignoring the reality, citizens demand solutions for the crisis which the country is currently facing.
Ecuador's National Assembly did not give way to proposed reforms that would have decriminalized abortion in cases of rape or incest. The proposed reforms would have allowed abortion for pregnant rape or incest victims, and in the case that women's health is at risk during pregnancy. According to official figures, 11 cases of rape against women and children are reported daily. 3,000 women under the age of 15 have been raped and become pregnant due to the rape every year. The proposal lost by 5 votes. It only got 65 votes in favor, 59 against, and 9 abstentions. Many feminist movements have taken to the streets to reject the decision and have been met with police. Meanwhile, religious groups have supported the decision. Another topic that was debated in Ecuador's National Assembly was the use of cannabis for medicinal purposes. In this case, the National Assembly approved the production, commercialization, distribution, and consumption of cannabis for medicinal or therapeutical purposes. The vote obtained 83 votes in favor, 23 against, 1 blank, and 23 abstentions. Medical students in Ecuador have won their battle to prevent the government from cutting their pay. But that's not the only problem facing the country's health system, as Denise Herrera reports.
Ecuador's medical students held a series of demonstrations to reject the health ministry's plan to cut the salary they received during their internship. In the end, the authorities withdraw the measure and the students will keep their current salary of $591 per month.
It is a step forward, and as I said before, this is not just a fight of our salaries. It's a fight to respect the student rights and the gremio.
But Ecuador's health sector is facing other concerns too. Recently, a doctor at one of the main public hospitals in Quito was sacked after he denounced irregularities in the purchase of medicines.
This happens because I'm fighting for my rights, and that's why they have removed me from my post, just for saying the things as they are. I will continue fighting for the patients. That's why we receive a salary. When we see that things don't go as they should, it's hard to continue with our work.
Many patients say they can't get the medicines they need or they are too expensive.
I have hypertension. I don't have insulin and it is what I need. We pay all the obligations in time and there is no medicine. They said that after 3 months probably will come the medicine.
We are buying the medicines in a particular pharmacy because there are no medicines and they are expensive.
Following the outcry, Dr. Barriga has now been reinstated, and the government insists it will respect the Ecuadorian people's right to health care. But doctors and medical students insist they must continue their fight to ensure that all patients get a better service. Denise Herrera, Telesur, Ecuador.
Students and filmmakers in Brazil have demonstrated against what they say is censorship by the National Film Agency Ancine. The protesters marched to the offices of the agency in Rio de Janeiro, where they denounced the new regulations and guidelines for audiovisual productions. The Jair Bolsonaro administration has, in the last couple of months, increased pressure on Ancine to censor audiovisual productions that do not align with the government's views. In July, Bolsonaro accused Ancine of supporting what he called pornography.
We are experiencing dark times right now in this country, where things that we have been conquering for many years are being threatened at this time, and it is obvious that they need to be defended.
Chile's capital city and its outskirts are suffering from the worst drought in 70 years. The Santiago metropolitan region, Chacabuco province, San Nicolás, and Aculeo are among the worst hit areas. The government has declared an agricultural emergency in many areas to try to fast-track a series of relief measures for farmers. These includes also provision of drinking water and medicine for animals. The world's leading copper-producing country uses large quantities of water for the industry, which is the backbone of the economy. Chile is also set to host the Global Conference on Climate Change in December.
This year has been too dry. You can see it hasn't rained at all. And this affects all of us because the summer is coming. The summer is when you need more water. We won't be able to enjoy the water. It's a big problem, that's the truth, a big problem.
What the government should do is to take this issue seriously and make serious commitments to stop climate change, above all if we are at the site of the next climate change conference. But also regulate certain activities that use and abuse water at the cost of people who live in those places who are unable to have access to water.
After this last break, the CIA sues U.S. whistleblower Edward Snowden again. Stay with us to find out why. Thank you for joining us again. Indigenous people from the Amazon have called for stronger measures to save the rainforest. The vice president of the Coordination of Indigenous Organizations of the Amazon River Basin, Tuntiak Katan, on Tuesday pleaded with the international community to desist from making empty declarations on protecting the Amazon forest. He lamented that no efforts have been taken to implement most of the previous declarations. Leaders of various indigenous communities from the Amazon are in the United States to attend a United Nations climate conference, which kicks off next week in New York City.
No necesitamos simplemente una declaración.
But we don't need simply a speech or a declaration. Your declaration is not enough. It will be enough when there is action at the level of each government. For example, the United States government, so that things that are happening in the world can change.
United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has warned that urgent action is needed to combat climate change. In an interview with the Covering Climate Now media coalition, Guterres said governments have to make strong and quick decisions to protect the environment from further damage. He also expressed regret that some governments are failing to fulfill their commitments towards the reduction of greenhouse gases.
And what I want is to have the whole of society putting pressure on governments to make governments understand they need to run faster, because we are losing the race. What the science tells us today is that these targets are still reachable, but that needs profound changes in the way we produce food, in the way we power our economies, in the way we organize our cities, in the way we produce energy.
The U.S. Justice Department has sued former CIA employee Edward Snowden over the release of his new book. Snowden's memoir, titled Permanent Record, goes on sale this Wednesday. It offers an expansive account on how he decided in 2013 to reveal secret details about the government's mass collection of telephone calls, emails, and internet activity in the name of national security. But the Justice Department says he violated non-disclosure agreements that he had signed with the CIA and the National Security Agency, where he also worked as a contractor.
And so, of course, this is the first thing we've heard from Snowden since he moved himself to Moscow. So we do think it's a big deal here. We took a big position on it, larger than others. And this is also one that we had to sign affidavits saying that we would not put the book out early or let other people look at the book early.
The leader of Israel's Blue and White Alliance has called for a unity government as exit polls in Israel's election indicate a tight race. Benny Gantz said they have already started to prepare for talks towards a unity government, as preliminary results indicated a stallment. According to these results, the Blue and White Party and the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's party had 32 seats each of the parliament's 120, with more than 90% of the votes counted. However, Netanyahu says he'll await final results and is prepared to negotiate. Taxi drivers and operators in the South African city of Pretoria held a demonstration on Tuesday in protest against xenophobia, gender-based violence, and drug trafficking. The drivers and operators affiliated to the South African National Taxi Council drove through the city's central business district to express their displeasure at attacks on women and African migrants. The protest was held under the slogan, "Not in our name." They also used the protest to refute allegations that they were behind the recent xenophobic violence which rocked the country 2 weeks ago. Unrest has continued in West Papua as the Indonesian government cracks down on human rights activists. West Papuans continue to call for independence of the region from Indonesia. Recently, authorities have targeted human rights activists, and most of them are reported to have fled the area for fear of prosecution. The region has been in civil unrest since August, following police detentions and alleged racial slurs against ethnic Papuan students. So far, more than 2,000 students are reported to have abandoned their studies due to racially targeted attacks in Indonesian schools.
For more than 3 weeks, Indonesia already deployed more than 8,000 troops in West Papua. situation is not safe for the people of West Papua, especially for the activists, also students. Thousands of students from Java, from Bali, from Sumatra already being in Jayapura. They went home in Jayapura after the instruction under the Papuan Assembly, Papuan People Assembly.
And with that, we end our news brief. But you can find all of our stories by checking our website, telesurenglish.net. And be sure to check us on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.